The alarm screamed through the bridge of the alien ship. Ambassador Vex Thor grabbed his seat as another explosion shook the vessel. His assistant, Kira Lin, worked frantically at the damaged communications panel. Her 6 fingers moved across the controls, trying to send out their distress signal. "The message won't reach our fleet," she said, her voice trembling. "The damage is too severe. The signal is bouncing everywhere." Vex Thor looked at the viewing screen. 6 enemy ships surrounded them. The Krathan Empire had found them far from any help. The peaceful Zenthari people had never been warriors. They had always relied on others for protection. Now, those others were too far away. "Send it anyway," Vex Thor ordered. "Someone might hear us." Kira Lin pressed the final button. The distress signal shot out into space, carrying their location and a desperate plea for help. She had no idea where it would go. She only hoped it would reach someone, anyone, before the Krathan destroyed their ship. Far across the galaxy, on a small blue planet called Earth, Jake Morrison was finishing his coffee. He worked the night shift at Deep Space Monitoring Station Alpha in Nevada. The job was usually boring. Most nights he just watched static and recorded background noise from space. Then his computer started beeping. Jake sat up straight and stared at the screen. Something was coming through. It was not just random noise. This was an actual signal. "Dr. Wright!" Jake called out. "You need to see this!" Dr. Amy Wright rushed over from her desk. She was the head scientist at the station. When she saw the readings, her eyes went wide. "Is this real?" she whispered. "I think so," Jake replied. "The computer is trying to decode it now." They watched as the artificial intelligence worked on the alien message. Slowly, pieces began to make sense. There were coordinates. There was a distress call. There was a warning about military ships and an attack. Dr. Wright picked up her phone. "I need to call Washington." 3 hours later, President Linda Grant sat in the Situation Room with her top military advisors. Admiral Greg Patterson stood at the front of the room, showing everyone the decoded message on a large screen. "We believe this is a genuine distress signal from an alien species," the Admiral explained. "They are under attack and calling for help." "But why would their signal reach us?" asked one general. "We've never made contact with aliens before." "It appears to be an accident," Dr. Wright answered through the video link. "Their communications equipment was damaged. The signal bounced through several points in space and ended up here." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. This was first contact. This was the moment humanity had wondered about for centuries. But it was not happening the way anyone had imagined. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" President Grant asked. "Madam President, we have the new Earth Defense Fleet ready," Patterson said carefully. "We built those ships for a reason. We knew there was life out there. Now we have proof, and they need help." "Some people will say we should ignore this," another advisor argued. "We don't know these aliens. This could be a trap. We could be starting a war." President Grant stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the night sky, thinking about the scared aliens sending their desperate message into the void. She thought about what it meant to be human. She thought about the choice they faced. "We built ships to defend Earth," she said finally. "But what kind of people would we be if we only used them for ourselves? If someone calls for help, we answer. That is what defines us." She turned back to Admiral Patterson. "Send the fleet." Commander Kate Sullivan received her orders aboard the EDF Valiant. Her ship was one of humanity's first deep space vessels, built in secret over the past 10 years. Next to her, the EDF Guardian, commanded by Captain Ryan Brooks, prepared for launch. Kate looked at her crew. They were nervous. This was their first real mission, and it was going to be a combat situation. They had trained for years, but training was different from reality. "Listen up," Kate said over the ship's intercom. "We are about to make history. Some aliens out there sent a distress call. By accident, we received it. Now we're going to answer it. We don't know what we'll find. We don't know if we'll win. But we know one thing for certain. When someone asks for help, we show up. The crew members straightened in their seats. Fear was replaced by determination. They were not just soldiers anymore. They were humanity's answer to the universe. The two ships launched from Earth, their engines glowing bright blue as they accelerated toward the jump point. Behind them, the planet that had created them grew smaller. Ahead of them, the unknown waited. Aboard the Eternal Harmony, Vexthor held Kira Lynn's hand. The Crethan ships were preparing their final attack. Their shields were gone. Their weapons were destroyed. They had minutes left, maybe less. "Do you think anyone heard us?" Kira Lynn asked quietly. "I don't know," Vexthor admitted, "but I'm glad we tried." The Crethan ships moved closer, their weapons charging. Vexthor closed his eyes and waited for the end. Then something impossible happened. Two new ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel right between the Eternal Harmony and the Crethan fleet. These ships were smaller than the Crethan vessels, but they moved with aggressive confidence. The lead ship opened a communication channel. A strange face appeared on the screen. It had only two eyes, hair on its head, and a look of fierce determination. "This is Commander Kate Sullivan of the Earth Defense Fleet," the being said. "You called for help. We're here to answer." Vexthor stared in shock as the two human ships charged directly at the Crethan fleet. The battle for first contact had begun, and humanity had chosen to fight for strangers they had never met. The Crethan commander stared at his screen in confusion. Two small ships had just appeared from nowhere and were now flying straight toward his fleet. They were tiny compared to his warships. This made no sense. "Unknown vessels. Identify yourselves," he transmitted. "You are interfering with Crethan Empire business." Commander Kate Sullivan smiled grimly on the bridge of the Valiant. She had expected this. "All weapons fire at will. Show them what humans do." The Valiant and Guardian opened fire together. Their weapons were not as powerful as Crethan technology, but they were faster. The human ships moved in ways the Crethan had never seen before. They rolled, they spun, they suddenly stopped and accelerated in different directions. The Crethan ships tried to track them, but their weapons kept missing. The aliens fought using logical, predictable patterns. They moved in straight lines and calculated angles. Humans fought like they were still flying through the atmosphere of their home planet. They fought wild and unpredictable. "They move like insects," one Crethan officer shouted. "Focus fire on the lead ship," the commander ordered. But the Valiant was already gone, diving below the Crethan flagship. The Guardian appeared from above, firing at the ship's weak points. On the Eternal Harmony, Vexthor watched in amazement. The Crethan ships were trying to coordinate their attack, but the humans refused to follow any logical pattern. One moment they attacked, the next they retreated. Then they attacked from a completely different angle. "What kind of species fights like this?" Kira Lynn whispered. Aboard the Guardian, Captain Ryan Brooks studied the battlefield. The Crethan had 6 ships against their 2. The humans were faster, but the enemy had more firepower. They needed to change the situation quickly. "Kate, I have an idea," Ryan transmitted to the Valiant. "It's dangerous." "Everything we're doing is dangerous," Kate replied. "What do you have in mind?" "There's a moon nearby. If I use its gravity correctly, I can slingshot around it and hit their flagship from behind, but you need to keep them busy." Kate understood immediately. "How long do you need?" 5 minutes. "You've got it. Guardian, break off and execute your plan. Valiant will handle the others." The Guardian suddenly turned and raced away from the battle. The Crethan commander saw this and felt satisfied. One enemy ship was running away. That was logical. That was what weak species did. "2 ships pursue the fleeing vessel," he ordered. "The rest focus on the remaining one." This was exactly what Kate wanted. Now only 4 ships targeted the Valiant instead of 6. The odds were better, though still terrible. She pushed her ship hard, dodging and weaving through enemy fire. Her shields took hit after hit. "Shields at 40%, her weapons officer reported. "Keep firing," Kate ordered. "We just need to buy Ryan enough time." The Guardian raced toward the moon with 2 Krathan ships chasing. Ryan watched his calculations carefully. He needed to get the angle exactly right. Too steep and his ship would crash into the moon. Too shallow and the gravity slingshot would not work. "Captain, they're gaining on us," his pilot warned. "Let them," Ryan said calmly. "Hold this course." The Guardian dove toward the moon's surface, getting dangerously close. The Krathan ships followed, firing constantly. Then, at the last possible moment, Ryan gave the order. "Full thrust! Execute the slingshot now!" The Guardian's engines roared. The ship curved around the moon, using its gravity to build incredible speed. The 2 Krathan ships tried to follow, but their pilots were too cautious. They pulled up early, afraid of crashing. The Guardian shot away from the moon like a bullet from a gun. It was now traveling faster than any ship in the battle, and it was heading straight for the Krathan flagship from behind. Back at the main battle, Kate saw the Guardian's approach on her sensors. "All ships, this is Valiant. Guardian is coming in hot. Clear the firing zone." The Krathan commander finally noticed the danger, but it was too late. The Guardian appeared behind his flagship, moving at tremendous speed. Ryan gave the order to fire everything. The Guardian's weapons tore into the flagship's engines. Explosions rippled across the massive ship's hull. The flagship began to spin out of control, its systems failing one by one. "All Krathan vessels, fall back!" the commander shouted. "Fall back now!" The Krathan ships began to retreat. They had never faced an enemy like this before. These small human ships fought without fear. They used tactics that seemed insane but somehow worked. 3 Krathan ships were destroyed or badly damaged. The remaining 3 fled into faster-than-light travel. As the enemy disappeared, silence fell across the human ships. Then the crew members began to cheer. They had done it. They had won humanity's first space battle. But Kate did not cheer. She looked at the damage reports. The Valiant had taken heavy hits. The Guardian was also damaged. They had been lucky. Very lucky. "Lieutenant Dan Pierce, take a team and board the alien ship we came to rescue," Kate ordered. "Let's meet the beings we just fought for." Dan Pierce and his team put on their spacesuits and crossed to the Eternal Harmony. When the airlock opened, they saw Ambassador Vexthor and Kiralyn waiting nervously. The humans removed their helmets. Vexthor studied the human faces. They looked tired but determined. Their eyes showed something he had never seen before in any species. It was not anger or hatred. It was controlled intensity. These were beings who could fight with brutal efficiency, but who chose to fight for others. "Thank you," Vexthor said in his own language. The human suits automatically translated it. "You saved our lives. But I must ask, who are you? We have never heard of your species." Dan smiled. "We're humans from Earth. We picked up your distress signal by accident. Our commander decided to answer it." "By accident?" Kiralyn repeated. "You came all this way. You fought the Krathan Empire. You risked your lives, all because of an accident?" "Well, yeah," Dan replied simply. "You called for help. What else were we supposed to do?" Vexthor felt his legs go weak. His species had been part of the Galactic Coalition for thousands of years. He knew dozens of alien races. All of them would have carefully considered the risks before acting. They would have held meetings and debates. They would have asked for more information. But these humans had simply shown up and fought. They had not hesitated. They had not questioned. Someone called for help, and they answered. "What kind of species are you?" Vexthor asked quietly. Dan thought about the question. "We're the kind that answers when someone calls." Aboard the Valiant, Kate opened a communication channel to the Eternal Harmony. When Vexthor's face appeared on her screen, she spoke clearly. "Ambassador, we need to talk. We need to know what's happening in this part of space, and we need to know what we just got ourselves into. Vexthor nodded slowly. Commander Sullivan, I will tell you everything. But I warn you, once you learn the truth, your world will never be the same. The meeting room aboard the Valiant was quiet. Commander Kate Sullivan sat across from Ambassador Vexthor and Kira Lynn. Captain Ryan Brooks attended through video link from the Guardian. Earth's leaders watched through a secure transmission, including President Linda Grant and Admiral Greg Patterson. Vexthor looked at the humans gathered before him. He had prepared speeches and diplomatic words, but looking into their eyes, he decided to speak plainly. You asked what you got yourselves into, Vexthor began. The answer is complicated and frightening. Let me start with the Galactic Coalition. It is an alliance of 47 species. We have existed for over 10,000 of your years. We trade, we share knowledge, we live in peace. Sounds nice, Kate said. What's the problem? The problem is the Krethan Empire, Kira Lynn answered. They have been at war with us for decades. They conquer our worlds, take our resources, and push deeper into Coalition space every year. Ryan frowned. Why haven't you stopped them? 47 species should have enough military power. Vexthor and Kira Lynn looked at each other. This was the difficult part. Commander Sullivan, Captain Brooks, I need to explain something about the Coalition species, Vexthor said carefully. All of us evolved from prey animals or peaceful species. We think defensively. We build defensive fleets. We create defensive strategies. The very concept of aggressive warfare is uncomfortable for us. Kate leaned forward. Wait, you're saying everyone in your coalition evolved from prey species? Yes, Vexthor confirmed. In all our exploration, we have never found a predator species that achieved space travel. The statistics suggest it is nearly impossible. Predators are too aggressive, too violent. They usually destroy themselves before reaching the stars. The room fell silent as the humans absorbed this information. You're saying we're the first? Kate said slowly. The first predator species we have ever encountered, Vexthor agreed. When I watched you fight the Krethan, I finally understood what that means. You did not think about defense. You attacked. You took risks that no coalition commander would ever consider. You fought like hunters. President Grant spoke from Earth. Ambassador Vexthor, are you afraid of us? Vexthor considered the question honestly. Yes, Madam President, I am terrified. But I am also hopeful. Because the Krethan are not predators like you. They are territorial and aggressive, but they do not hunt. They do not think like you think. And that is why we are losing the war. Admiral Patterson stood up on the Earth feed. You want our help to fight them. We want to offer you a choice, Kira Lynn said. You could join the coalition as a protected developing species. We would give you technology and knowledge, but it would take centuries of observation before you became full members. Or you could become independent allies, and we could work together now. Kate smiled slightly. You don't want us in your coalition. You're scared we'll take over. Can you blame us? Vexthor asked. We have just met you, and already you have shown military capabilities beyond most of our species. What happens when you have our technology? What happens when humans spread across the galaxy? Ryan stood up and walked closer to the camera. Ambassador, let me tell you something about humans. Yes, we evolved as hunters. Yes, we can be aggressive and violent, but we also evolved to work in groups, to care for our families, to protect the weak. We are predators, but we are also guardians. How can we believe that? Kira Lynn asked. Because we're here, Kate answered simply. We received a distress call from complete strangers. We could have ignored it. We could have been cautious and careful. Instead, we came to help. That is also who we are. Admiral Patterson cleared his throat. I have a proposal. Humanity will help you end this war with the Krethan. In exchange, we want full coalition membership and access to your technology. Vexthor shook his head. I cannot make that decision alone. The Coalition Council must vote on it, and I warn you, most of them will be afraid. Then let us prove ourselves, President Grant said. Let us show the Council that humans can control our aggressive instincts. Let us demonstrate that predators can choose to protect instead of destroy. 2 weeks later, aboard the Coalition flagship Starlight Promise, Fleet Commander Zintha attended her first meeting with human military officers. She was a Valerian, a species known for their careful and logical thinking. When she entered the briefing room and saw the humans waiting, she felt immediate fear. The humans stood differently than Coalition species. They stood straight and confident, like they owned the space around them. Their eyes tracked her movements with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. These were hunters. Her instincts screamed. These were dangerous. But she was a fleet commander. She pushed her fear aside and sat down. Commander Zintha, Admiral Patterson greeted her. Thank you for meeting with us. We understand the Coalition Council has not yet decided about our membership, but while they debate, we would like to help with the war effort. What do you propose? Zintha asked carefully. Colonel Pete Harris stepped forward with a holographic display. We have studied the Krathen tactics from the data Ambassador Vexthor provided. They are predictable. They use overwhelming force in straight assaults. They expect you to defend and retreat. That is correct, Zintha agreed. And when we try to attack, they defeat us. They have superior numbers. Because you attack the way they expect, Kate Sullivan said, now promoted to captain after the battle. You attack logically. You calculate the odds and attack when victory seems certain. But what if you attacked when they least expect it? What if you made them react to you instead? Zintha felt her stomach turn. You are suggesting aggressive tactics, unnecessary risks. We're suggesting effective tactics, Pete corrected. Look, we know this makes you uncomfortable, but the Krathen are winning because they know exactly how you think. We can teach you to think differently, not to become predators, but to understand how predators fight. Over the next month, human officers trained Coalition forces in new combat doctrines. Captain Ryan Brooks taught Coalition pilots how to use evasive maneuvers. Kate Sullivan showed Coalition commanders how to plan offensive strikes. Dr. Lisa Martinez, a human xenobiologist, helped Coalition species understand the psychological aspects of aggressive warfare. It was difficult for everyone. Coalition officers felt wrong using these tactics. Humans tried to be patient, but got frustrated with how cautious their students were. Then the Krathen attacked Tharsis Prime, an important agricultural world. The Coalition fleet with human advisors moved to intercept. Commander Zintha sat in her command chair, feeling sick. Her orders were to use human tactics, to be aggressive, to take risks. Everything in her peaceful nature screamed against it. But she looked at the planet below. Millions of innocent people lived there. If the Krathen took this world, those people would suffer. All ships, she transmitted, her voice shaking slightly. We will not defend the planet. We will attack the Krathen fleet directly. We will use unpredictable patterns. We will make them afraid. The human advisor next to her, Captain Jake Morrison, smiled. Good hunting, Commander. The battle was brutal but short. The Krathen expected the Coalition to form defensive positions around the planet. Instead, the Coalition ships charged forward in scattered formations. When the Krathen tried to concentrate fire, the Coalition ships split apart and attacked from multiple angles. The Krathen retreated after losing 5 ships. Tharsis Prime was saved. After the battle, Zintha sat alone in her quarters. They had won. She should feel happy. But she felt dirty. They had destroyed fleeing Krathen ships. They had shown no mercy. Jake Morrison entered quietly. Commander, may I speak with you? Zintha nodded, unable to speak. You feel corrupted? Jake said gently. You feel like you lost something important today. We killed them as they ran, Zintha whispered. We were predators. Jake sat down across from her. No, you were warriors. There is a difference. Predators kill for food or instinct. Warriors fight to protect others. What you did today saved millions of lives on that planet. But how do you live with it? Zintha asked. How do humans turn off that violence when the battle ends? Because we choose to, Jake answered. That is what makes us different from simple predators. We can be aggressive when needed, but we can also be peaceful. We can hunt, but we can also farm. We can fight, but we can also love. The violence is a tool, Commander. It does not define us. Zintha looked at the human's face. She saw no cruelty there. She saw only calm understanding. Will you teach us this control? She asked. That is what we have been trying to do all along, Jake replied with a gentle smile. The Coalition Council chamber was enormous. Representatives from 47 species sat in a circular arrangement, each on platforms suited to their particular biology. At the center stood Ambassador Vexthor and President Linda Grant, who had traveled from Earth for this crucial meeting. The debate had been going on for hours. Most council members were afraid of humanity. They had seen the battle reports. They had watched the recordings of human ships fighting with terrifying efficiency. Now they argued about whether to accept humans as full members or keep them at a distance. They are predators, shouted Council Member Thexrin, a tall being with blue skin. In 10,000 years, no predator species has ever reached the stars without destroying itself. What makes these humans different? President Grant stepped forward. Council member, may I answer that? The council leader, an ancient being called Elder Morvan, nodded permission. You are right to be afraid, Linda said calmly. We are predators. We evolved by hunting. Violence is part of our history. But so is cooperation. Humans survived by working together, by caring for our families, by protecting our communities. Yes, we can fight, but we choose when to fight and when to make peace. Pretty words, another council member said. But how do we know you will not turn on us once you have our technology? Because we already proved it, Vexthor spoke up. When they received our distress call, humans did not hesitate. They did not calculate the risks. They simply came to help strangers. That is not the action of mindless predators. That is the action of noble beings. The council chamber erupted in debate again. Some agreed with Vexthor. Others remained fearful. The discussion went in circles. Finally, Elder Morvan raised his hand for silence. This council is divided. Therefore, I propose a test. The Krethen have been quiet since their defeat at Tharsis Prime. They are planning something large. When they strike again, humanity will lead the coalition defense. If they protect our worlds with honor, they will earn full membership. If they abuse their power, we will reject them. All in favor? The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity would have one chance to prove themselves. 3 months later, Admiral Greg Patterson stood on the bridge of the new flagship, EDF Liberty. Around him floated a combined human coalition fleet of over 100 ships. Intelligence reports showed that the Krethen were gathering their forces for a massive attack on the coalition core worlds. Admiral, long-range sensors are picking up Krethen fleet movements, reported the sensor officer. It is their entire military. Every ship they have. Greg felt the weight of the moment. This was not just a battle. This was humanity's test. He looked around at his crew, a mix of humans and coalition officers working side by side. All ships, this is Admiral Patterson. The enemy is coming. Today we show the galaxy what happens when predators choose to protect instead of prey. Today we prove that humanity belongs among the stars. Commander Kate Sullivan commanded a squadron of mixed human and coalition ships. Next to her, the Valiant now had a Zenthari science officer and a Valerian weapons expert. They had become friends over the past months. Captain Sullivan, the Zenthari officer said nervously, the Krethen numbers are overwhelming. 300 ships against our 100. Kate smiled. Then it is a fair fight. Remember what we taught you. They think in straight lines. We think in chaos. Let us show them chaos. Captain Ryan Brooks, now commanding an entire battle group, felt his heart racing. This was the biggest battle humanity had ever faced. If they lost here, Earth itself might be the next target. But he was not afraid. Around him were coalition ships that had learned human tactics. More importantly, they had learned human courage. The Cruthan fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in the Vega Nebula, a region of dense gas and radiation that would interfere with sensors. It was a smart choice. In poor visibility, superior numbers would matter more than clever tactics, or so the Cruthan General Vexkar thought. Begin the assault, he ordered. Sweep them aside. The Cruthan fleet moved forward in their traditional formation, a massive wall of ships advancing together. It was an intimidating sight. Then the coalition human fleet did something unexpected. They split apart. Small groups of ships scattered in different directions, disappearing into the nebula's dense gas clouds. "What are they doing?" General Vexkar demanded. "Are they running?" But they were not running. They were hunting. Kate's squadron appeared behind a group of Cruthan ships, firing quickly before disappearing again. Ryan's battle group hit another section from the side. Coalition ships that had once been defensive now struck like predators picking off prey from a herd. The Cruthan tried to maintain formation, but it was impossible. They could not see the enemy clearly in the nebula. Attacks came from unexpected directions. Ships they thought were fleeing would suddenly turn and fight. "This is chaos!" one Cruthan officer shouted. "Exactly," Kate said to herself, hearing the intercepted transmission. "Now you know how prey feels." The battle raged for 6 hours. The Valiant took heavy damage when it encountered 3 Cruthan cruisers. Kate ordered a risky maneuver, diving directly between 2 of them and firing at both simultaneously. The tactic worked, but left her ship badly damaged. "Captain, we need to fall back for repairs," her engineering officer reported. "Negative," Kate replied. "Our squadron needs us. Keep fighting." On the Liberty, Admiral Patterson watched the tactical display. The humans and coalition forces were winning, but the cost was high. Good ships were being destroyed. Good people were dying. Then he saw it. The Cruthan command ship, larger than any other vessel, was exposed. Most of its escorts had been pulled away to respond to coalition attacks. "All capital ships converge on my position," Greg ordered. "We are going after their command vessel." General Vexkar saw the human flagship approaching with a dozen coalition capital ships. He smiled. Finally, a direct confrontation. This was how proper wars were fought. "All weapons, target the lead ship. Destroy it." The Liberty's shields blazed under the assault. Explosions rocked the ship. Crew members worked frantically to keep systems running. "Admiral, shields at 20%, the tactical officer reported. "We cannot take much more." Greg looked at the enemy ship. They were close now, very close. He thought about his orders from President Grant. Win with honor. Show the galaxy who humans really were. He made his decision. "All ships. Cease fire on the command vessel. Target its engines and weapons only. Disable it, do not destroy it." "Sir?" The tactical officer looked confused. "You heard me? Disable it." Ryan Brooks heard the order and understood immediately. They were showing mercy. Even in the heat of battle, even with victory in their grasp, they were choosing not to kill unnecessarily. The combined fleet focused their fire carefully. The Cruthan command ship's weapons exploded. Its engines went dead. The massive vessel was helpless, but it was not destroyed. On the Cruthan command ship, General Vexkar stood in shock. His ship was disabled. The battle was lost. By all military tradition, he should be dead. The victor should destroy the defeated. But instead, a communication channel opened. The human admiral appeared on the screen. "General Vexkar, Admiral Patterson said calmly. "Your fleet is defeated. Your command ship is disabled. You have two choices. Continue fighting and we will destroy every ship you have. Or we can talk about peace. Your choice." Vexcar stared at the human. This made no sense. Victors do not offer choices to the defeated. They take what they want. "Why would you offer me mercy?" Vexcar asked. "We are your enemies." "Because that is what humans do," Greg answered. "We fight to protect, not to destroy. We win wars, so we can make peace. So I ask again, General, do you want to continue this war, or shall we talk?" For a long moment, Vexcar said nothing. He looked around his damaged bridge. He thought about the thousands of Cruthen who had died today. He thought about his own people back home, waiting to hear if their sons and daughters would return. "I will talk," Vexcar said finally. "I will talk about peace." Throughout the fleet, humans and coalition members alike stopped fighting. The Krethian ships powered down their weapons. In the Vega Nebula, surrounded by debris and the wounded, an impossible peace began. On the Liberty, Kate Sullivan's voice came through the communication system. "Admiral, the Valiant is pretty beat up, but we are still flying. Did we do it? Did we pass the test?" Greg looked out at the combined fleet, at the disabled Krethen ships, at the hope of peace ahead. "Yes, Captain, I believe we did." 6 months had passed since the battle in the Vega Nebula. The negotiations between the Coalition and the Krethen Empire had been long and difficult, but a ceasefire held. Slowly, carefully, both sides were learning to trust each other. On Earth, in the city of Geneva, a special ceremony was being prepared. The Galactic Coalition Council had voted, and today they would announce their decision about humanity's membership. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in her dress uniform, looking out at Lake Geneva. The Valiant had been repaired and was now in orbit above Earth, part of the planet's permanent defense fleet. She had been promoted again, given command of the entire Earth defense fleet. "Nervous?" asked a voice behind her. Kate turned to see Captain Ryan Brooks also in his dress uniform. He had his own command now, leading the exploration division that would take humans to new star systems. "A little," Kate admitted. "We fought hard to get here. What if they still say no?" Ryan smiled. "Then we keep being who we are. We do not need their approval to be good people." Inside the ceremony hall, thousands of beings gathered. Representatives from all 47 coalition species filled the seats. Human diplomats sat in a special section, with President Linda Grant at the front. Admiral Greg Patterson stood nearby, along with Colonel Pete Harris and Dr. Lisa Martinez. At the center of the stage stood Ambassador Vex Thor and Elder Morvan, the council leader. When everyone was seated, Morvan raised his hand for silence. 6 months ago, we faced a difficult choice, Morvan began. His voice was old but strong. A new species had entered our galaxy, a predator species. We were afraid. Fear is natural when facing the unknown. The hall was completely quiet. But this predator species did something we did not expect, Morvan continued. When they received a distress call by accident, they came to help. When they fought our enemies, they won with honor. When they had victory, they chose mercy. Today, the Galactic Coalition Council votes to accept humanity as full members. Welcome, people of Earth. Welcome to the stars. The hall erupted in applause. Some species cheered loudly. Others showed approval in their own ways. President Grant stood, tears in her eyes, and bowed to the council. Kate and Ryan watched the ceremony through a video feed. Kate felt her throat tighten with emotion. They had done it. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. "We should celebrate," Ryan said. "This is history." "Later," Kate replied. "Right now I want to check on my crew. They are the ones who made this possible." On the Coalition capital world, in a quiet garden, Commander Zintha met with Jake Morrison. The Valerian officer had become close friends with the human captain over the past months. They often talked about military strategy, but today they just enjoyed the peaceful garden. "Your people must be very proud," Zintha said. "We are," Jake agreed. "But we are also grateful. You took a chance on us. You let us prove ourselves." Zintha looked at the human carefully. "I was terrified of you when we first met. You were predators, and I was prey. But now I understand something important. Being a predator does not make you evil. It is what you choose to do with that nature that matters." "We could not have succeeded without your help," Jake said. "You taught us patience. You showed us that strength is not just about fighting." Coalition species have wisdom that humans need to learn. Far from the celebrations on a Krothan world, General Vex Carr met with his own council. The Krothan people were adjusting to the new peace. It was difficult for them. They had been at war for so long. "The humans sent a message," one council member reported. "They want to establish diplomatic relations with the Krothan Empire." "Why?" another member asked suspiciously. "They defeated us. Why would they want to talk?" Vexakar remembered his conversation with Admiral Patterson aboard the disabled command ship. The human had said something that stayed with him. "Because they believe even enemies can become friends," Vexakar said quietly. "I thought it was weakness. But I was wrong. It takes greater strength to make peace than to make war." He stood up and looked at his council. "We will accept their offer. We will talk. Perhaps we can learn from these strange predators." Back on Earth, Jake Morrison sat in his apartment, making a video call to his daughter Emma. She was 10 years old and full of questions about the aliens. "Daddy, what is it like meeting aliens?" Emma asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Jake thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the battles, the friendships formed with beings from other worlds. "It is amazing, sweetheart," he said. "Scary sometimes, but amazing. We met people who are very different from us. They look different, they think different. But we learned that we can work together." "Are they nice?" Emma asked. "Most of them are," Jake replied. "Some were scared of us at first. They thought humans were too dangerous. But we showed them that we can be good friends." "What will happen now?" Emma wondered. Jake smiled at his daughter. "Now we explore, we learn. We make friends with more species. Earth is part of something bigger now. When you grow up, you can visit other planets. You can meet aliens. You can help build this new future." "I want to do what you do, Daddy," Emma said excitedly. "I want to help people in space." "Then study hard," Jake told her. "Learn everything you can. The galaxy needs good people like you." After the call ended, Jake looked out his window at the night sky. Somewhere up there, coalition ships flew alongside human vessels. Species that had once been strangers now worked together. He thought about that first distress call, sent by accident to a planet the galaxy did not even know existed. Such a small thing, really. A damaged communication system, a signal bouncing through space, pure chance. But because of that chance, everything had changed. At the Geneva ceremony, Admiral Patterson gave a speech to the assembled coalition members and humans. When Ambassador Vexthor's ship sent that distress signal, they did not know where it would go, Greg said. They did not know humanity existed. It was an accident, a mistake. But sometimes the best things in life happen by accident. He paused, looking around at the diverse crowd of species. We could have ignored that call. We could have been cautious and careful, but we chose to answer. We chose to help strangers in danger. That choice defined us. It showed the galaxy who humans really are. We are predators, yes. We evolved by hunting. We know how to fight, but we also know how to protect. We know how to care. We know how to answer when someone calls for help. That is our greatest strength. Ambassador Vexthor stood and joined Patterson on the stage. Humans say they answered by accident. But I do not believe in accidents anymore. The universe brought us together for a reason. The coalition needed humans to teach us courage. Humans needed the coalition to give them purpose. Together we are stronger. In the audience, Dr. Lisa Martinez wiped tears from her eyes. She thought about all the scientific discoveries ahead. 47 species worth of knowledge to learn and share. So many questions to answer. So many mysteries to explore. Colonel Pete Harris sat next to her, thinking about the military cooperation that would continue. Humans training coalition forces, coalition species teaching humans about alien technology. A partnership built on mutual respect. As the ceremony concluded and everyone began to leave, Kate Sullivan met with the crew of the Valiant. Her officers and enlisted personnel gathered around her in a private room. "I wanted to thank you all personally," Kate said. "We were the first human ship to fight in space. We were the first to answer that alien distress call. History will remember the Valiant and her crew forever." "We just did our jobs, Captain," one crew member said. "No," Kate corrected gently. "You did more than that. When we received those orders to investigate an unknown alien signal, you did not hesitate. You did not complain. You simply prepared to do what needed to be done. That is courage. That is what makes us human." Later that evening, Kate stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Ryan found her there, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Found you," he said, handing her a glass. "You should be celebrating." "I am celebrating," Kate replied. "I am just doing it quietly." They stood together, looking up at the stars. "What do you think comes next?" Ryan asked. Kate considered the question. "More exploration, more friendships, probably more conflicts too. The galaxy is a big place. There will be challenges. But we will face them together," Ryan said. "Humans and coalition. Maybe even the Cruthons someday." "Maybe," Kate agreed. They raised their glasses in a silent toast. Above them, stars twinkled in the night sky. Those stars were no longer distant and unreachable. They were neighbors. They were home to friends and allies. On the Eternal Harmony, now repaired and serving as a diplomatic vessel, Kira Lynn worked at her communication station. She smiled as she remembered the damaged system that had accidentally sent their signal to Earth. That accident had saved their lives. That accident had brought humanity to the stars. That accident had changed the galaxy. She thought about sending a message of thanks to Earth, but she had done that many times already. Instead, she simply whispered a prayer of gratitude to whatever cosmic force had guided that signal to the right planet at the right time. Somewhere in space, the distress signal that had started everything continued to bounce through the void. Most of it had faded, but tiny fragments remained, traveling between stars. It was a message that said, "Help us, please, anyone." And humanity had heard it. Humanity had answered. That was the story the galaxy would remember. When strangers called for help, when the universe needed someone to answer, humanity was there. Not because they had to be, not because they were ordered to be, but because it was who they were. Predators who chose to protect, hunters who chose to heal, warriors who chose peace. They were human, and they had answered the call.